Achan teaches us that desire is just as important as direction. Grace and peace, everybody. Welcome to Sabbath School Study Group. This is part number 1 of our 5-part series, Beware of Covetousness. We're going to look at covetousness revealed, but also covetousness redeemed. In other words, how God can free us from this desire for ourselves. Simple name for it is greed. But when we look at these examples, I hope that we will see victory even in their failure. You know, when we look at the story of Achan, Achan is the story of Israel on the rise. Israel has actually just experienced their first, and at that point, their biggest victory when they fought the Battle of Jericho. But now here we are in the next victory to be that actually turned into a big defeat because their enemy, the opposition, was so small. That city of Ai. Well, there's a man named Achan who does something that the Lord tells them, the whole nation, not to do. They were not supposed to take anything from this particular opposition, but Achan does. In fact, it's here in Joshua chapter 7, verse 11. It says, Israel hath sinned, but specifically it was Achan who sinned, and that they have commanded in Joshua chapter 7, verse 11, it says, Israel hath sinned, but specifically it was Achan who had sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them. For they have taken of the accursed thing, and have also stolen, and disassembled also, and they have put it even among their own stuff. This story, which we're not going to spend a lot of time looking at, except this principle, and now working with that, where Achan had a desire. It was desire that Achan had in opposite and even in opposition to God's command. So when these two did not mesh, when these two were on opposite poles, there was a conflict. And in that case, what Achan desired was not so much the big deal. It was the fact that what he wanted is not what he needed. And what God had for him is not what he wanted. That's what made these things accursed things. We see them being used, the gold, the clothing, in other places in the scriptures. Remember, Jesus, when he came to this earth, he was given gold from the wise men who visited him. So gold wasn't the issue. It was the heart. It was the desire that made that thing accursed. It's reminiscent of what happened in Genesis chapter 3. In Genesis chapter 3 and verse number 6, when the woman, Eve, saw that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes and a tree to be desired to make one wise. Did you catch that? And a tree to be desired to make one wise. She took of the fruit thereof and did eat and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. Now they were going in the wrong direction in this case. And it was her desire that kept her there. Eve was not with her husband and Adam was not with his wife. They were not in the place that they were supposed to be. And as a result, that desire that Eve had is what drew her even into her failure. Remember, we don't know what fruit was on this tree. We see the apple, but that's just legend. The Bible doesn't say. We just know it was a fruit not to be touched. Is fruit bad? No, fruit in itself is not bad. But that tree was not where they were supposed to be. And that is what made it bad. Not just the destination, but the desire. You know, in Psalm 145, verse 16, we can see the reason for God's direction. And we can even see the reason why our desires can be fulfilled. It says, Thou openest thine hand and satisfiest the desire of every living thing. Psalm 145 is laying out the antidote for our greed and our covetousness. And it's raising up the standard for where we want to be, not just in our direction, but in our desire. To recognize that what God has in his hand is enough. What he offers, what he provides is sufficient. That was the promise for Achan. It was the promise for Eve and Adam. And it's the promise for you and me as we begin this journey in understanding how to beware of covetousness. It starts with a desire. That victory, that transition, and that being on alert starts with a change of desire.